Okay. Good morning and good afternoon if you're here with us on the East Coast. The clock has struck noon over here in Florida, and we are going to get underway. Welcome to the DICOM webinar, Understanding the Impact of E-Commerce on Commercial Loan Portfolios. I'm Jim Exander. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at DICOM, and I'm joined by Skip Constantine, who's our new market specialist, who comes to us with a banking background and will be doing most of the talking today. So first and foremost, let me get some logistics out of the way before we begin. Just so you know, we have muted all participant microphones upon your entry, and it's not because we don't want to hear from you. It's really because we just don't want any background noise to come through the session. So we apologize for that, but it is for the greater benefit of the community on the call. And we will be allowing for questions to be submitted through this chat interface here on the WebEx menu. So if you've got a question, we won't be able to address it due to time constraints during this session, but we will be happy to respond back via email. And you can also follow up. We'll give you our contact information. You can follow up directly with us either via phone or email should you have any questions or want to discuss any of the content in this webinar further. So a little bit about the objectives of the session. We're really going to be talking about the transformation the retail industry is experiencing. I'm sure you've heard a lot in the news about the retail apocalypse and the Amazon effect, et cetera, et cetera. So we've tried to take an unbiased evaluation of all this information that is available on this topic, put it together, and help illustrate how this may be impacting and creeping into your loan portfolios as risk. And then finally, utilizing Skip's banking background as well as information we've been able to glean through conversations with our customers, we'll be offering some new and potentially different approaches you may be able to take in loan review to help mitigate the impact of this transformation. So we're very excited to be getting underway, and just take a brief moment to introduce myself and Skip as well. I am the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing, but I have a strong marketing background where I really do focus on, let's say, industry advocate and different marketing intel and research projects here within DICOM. So some of you, hopefully many of you, are familiar with our Loan Review Industry Survey. It's really an industry survey that is sponsored by DICOM, and it's the largest, most robust, so to speak, industry survey in the marketplace. So we are going to be collecting the results from this survey that just finished up this month, and we're going to be presenting that in the form of a webinar next month in June and in a number of white papers which will follow in approximately the August timeframe. So something that is very widely used in the industry for peer-to-peer benchmarking purposes and things of that nature. So if you're not tuned into our survey, reach out to me after this webinar. I'd be happy to get you the information you need. I'm also involved with Voice of Customer, Market Intelligence, and Feedback. And really this is an effort to help leverage DICOM's position in the industry to gain information and help drive product innovation, as well as materialize in the form of webinars like this and white papers that we'll be publishing this year as well. And now I'll talk a little bit about Skip Constantine. I'll kind of turn it over to him and let him introduce himself and his role within the industry here at DICOM.
Jim, thank you for that introduction. I come to DICOM from a retail banking and loan review background. Most recently, I was with the state of Florida doing loan review and other exam activities. Here at DICOM, I'm doing market research, looking at industry trends, and advocating for the bankers. I was actually talking to a loan review officer in a bank, and he mentioned that this would be a good webinar topic to do. So this idea spawned out of that conversation with the loan review officer.
Excellent, and that's exactly the way we hope things will work. It's through the interaction with our customers and non-customers in the industry that help us gain a better picture of really what's going on and helps us zero in on topics that are important, really, which underscores our objective here. It's really to leverage our unique position here in the industry to be an advocate or to support loan review. So now that we've kind of set the framework here, I'm going to turn it over to Skip, and he's going to talk through the agenda and help get this session underway. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, here's what we will cover today. First, we will examine the current state of the retail sector. I'm sure you've already seen a lot in the news lately. We will summarize those stories into a recap and apply them to CRE loan portfolios. We will talk about ways to look at this, what type of risk is in your portfolio, and how to approach loan review with a retail mindset. Lastly, a forward-looking strategy, which involves looking at commercial mortgage-backed security trends, continued growth in e-commerce, and monitoring different types of retail properties at a more granular level. Abbreviations that will be used in this presentation are, this is the most important one. For commercial mortgage-backed securities, I'll be saying CMBS, and this will actually shorten the presentation a bit because that's a lot to say. Commercial real estate, I'll call that CRE. Other real estate is ORE or OREO. Real estate investment trust, refer to those as REITs. Allowance for loan and lease losses, refer to those as the ALLL. And debt service coverage ratio, DSCR. Just a quick definition for commercial mortgage-backed securities. These are commercial loans that are packaged up and sold to investors. And REITs are packaged up, they're mutual funds that hold properties instead of, they're like a mutual fund, they hold properties instead of stocks. That's how they're similar to mutual funds. The transformation of the retail industry. Retail is going through a transformation, and e-commerce is getting blamed. What we will show you throughout this webinar is that consumer shopping preferences have shifted towards convenience and experience. Additionally, retail has been overbuilt. So e-commerce is probably not the main culprit, but it has been in the news and it has been blamed as a mall killer. So we will address the reasons why throughout this webinar. In the first 11 months of 2017, more than 30 retailers have filed for bankruptcy. The chart on the right shows a projection of store closures for this year in 2018. As we know, Toys R Us has already announced their store closures, and I was surprised when I saw Walgreens on here with projecting 600 store closures. The reason why is when I was doing loan review, I saw a lot of single-tenant buildings and different banks' loan portfolios. Here's an interactive map that I downloaded off of CNBC. It's displaying South Carolina. That is not intentional. That's what populated when I pulled it up. I tried to make it display something else, but the dots went dark, so I'm not picking on South Carolina. But I would suggest looking at this map on CNBC, and you can click around in your area to see what stores or retail centers are slated to be closed, and I believe it even gives a time frame. Unfortunately, these are a common theme in the news lately. Everything must go. These headlines, see them almost daily. And there's an established mall near me. It's been around for more than 30 years, and that one is even in the process of closing. It's been reported that they're going to replace it with a hotel and some mixed-use CRE. Omnichannel, this is a real important definition. It seems to be what's driving change when and where consumers make purchases, and why some retailers fail and others succeed. I'm just going to quickly read the definition. Omnichannel is a multi-channel approach to sales that seeks to provide the customer with a seamless shopping experience, whether the customer is shopping online, from a desktop or mobile device. by telephone or in a brick and mortar store. And this reminds me, a couple of weeks ago, I was at the gym working out, and my workout partner said, you know, they got a sale over there at Best Buy, $60 off of electric razors, and you better get over there before the sale expires. I didn't feel like driving over there, even though it was only 2 miles away. I knew it would take close to 30 minutes to get there because of traffic, and I wanted to eat dinner. So I drove home and I ordered the electric razor online, reminding myself that I worked on this presentation and I can do that. And if I didn't like the electric razor after it arrived, I could simply take it back to the store at a more convenient time and return it. Toys R Us, unfortunately, wasn't able to make the switch to omni-channel. They were facing competition from online retailers, traditional brick-and-mortar retailers, and they had significant debt. So they were reminded, if a borrower is bogged down in debt, it can prevent it from being agile and adapting to changes in the marketplace. Nordstrom is a company that did make the shift to omni-channel. When a customer shops online at Nordstrom, they see everything that's in the warehouse available for sale, and the computer also shows them items that are in the store. So if the item's not in the warehouse, they order it, and an employee walks out on the shelf, grabs the item, and ships it to them. And that store, I understand, even gets credit for that sale. So their stores actually double as kind of a retail or a quasi-storage facility for retail items. This slide shows a distinction to observe when reviewing a loan. And this is what we observed from reviewing CMBS. Some brick-and-mortar retailers are more immune to this e-commerce squeeze. Class A mall REITs have performed better and increased their dividend payments. Also immune are tenants to provide entertainment-based offerings like bowling alleys, themed restaurants, and virtual experiences. So when looking at loan performance of Class A properties, they perform better than Class D properties over this, this cycle we're going through. Another fundamental reason for the struggles of big box retail is America built too many malls between 1970 and 2015. According to research, malls expanded twice as fast as the population during that period. Additional research shows that mall visits have declined every year since 2010. So this was probably additionally influenced by the Great Recession because consumers had less money. Whenever something is being overbuilt, you run the risk of oversupply. And eventually the surplus shows up in defaults, like the oversupply of housing did during the credit bust, and now the oversupply of retail space. These defaults don't happen overnight. The big question is how long will this oversupply in retail take to work out? Additionally, Fitch, and this is not to be confused with Abercrombie and Fitch, the retailer. Fitch thought this was a big enough concern that they modeled a retail shock scenario where Amazon's U.S. apparel market share increased. The result indicated apparel-focused retailers would experience cash flow erosion and weakened credit profiles. Cash flow erosion is something that makes debt service more difficult, especially when we're currently facing the headwinds of increasing interest rates. This graph, how have CRE loans performed, represents retailers with CRE loans. However, they're not bank portfolio loans, they are commercial mortgage-backed security loans. Since bank data is not available, can we use the performance of these loans as a guide when reviewing our CRE loan portfolio? Over on the left of the graph, the picture, you can see the largest borrower here is the Limited. They filed bankruptcy and were purchased by a private equity firm and now sell exclusively online. They had about $14 billion in debt. The next largest bankruptcy was Toys R Us. So we're going to look to CMBS performance and gain some insight to see how e-commerce fits at commercial overall at banks. So the Atlanta Fed thinks that CMBS could be used as a proxy. I highlighted a portion of the article here. I'm going to read it. It might be hard to see. Because data on delinquency rates on retail CRE alone are unavailable from banks, a proxy could be data from retail commercial mortgage-backed securities market. Banks that finance malls could be impacted. In such a scenario, one or more anchor tenants that keeps the mall thriving. If that anchor tenant vacates, it usually adversely affects mall traffic to the smaller tenants. Strip centers have similar characteristics to mall. They can have an anchor tenant, such as a busy coffee shop, or some retail shops. And the interesting thing here, when I was a loan review specialist at the FDIC, I saw many of these types of investor loans to strip centers in various bank portfolios. Here's some more evidence of weakness in the retail sector. Wheeler REIT, the owner of 60-plus retail properties, suspends their dividend payment. This is the first time since 2011 that a REIT has suspended a dividend payment. Their largest tenant is BI-LO. As part of BI-LO's bankruptcy, they are planning on closing 200 stores. BI-LO is owned by Southeastern Grocers, who also owns Winn-Dixie. So that's probably why the picture of Winn-Dixie is showing up there as well. An interesting side note, Southeastern Grocers had $475 million in unsecured debt. So what is the current state of retail CRE? Since it's not broken out on the call report, we'll look at CMBS for the answer. This slide shows there are still problems in the retail area, and retail has the highest delinquency rates of properties that are securitized. The asset classes are broken out by the following categories: retail over on the left, office, industrial, mixed use, hotel, other, and multifamily. Going back to the center of the slide, it says total. When I first saw that, I thought it was a new asset class. And then I realized it's just the average of all of those together. So where are we at in the e-commerce expansion cycle? E-commerce is still expanding. In September, Governor Cuomo announced that Amazon would open its first New York area fulfillment center on Staten Island in 2018. As e-commerce continues its growth, this disruptor could make inroads into various banks. So we see e-commerce is still growing. Here's the American Banker article and some key points to look at from this article. And this is an article I would definitely suggest reading. But the key points, we're not going to rehash everything. Banks are exposed to retail woes through direct lending and other indirect avenues. This was astounding to me. Combined debt of retailing companies and retailing properties exceed $1 trillion. Retail loan delinquencies are a trailing indicator. Some market signals are more dynamic, such as share prices of companies in shopping malls and other retailers, like the REITs we spoke about earlier. S&P 500 Retail Real Estate Investment Trust Index, and performances of indices tied to CMBS. So, will this impact my portfolio? Naturally, you would look at other institutions' call reports to see what levels they are lending at, but banks do not report loan exposures by sector on the call report. However, Public disclosures indicate that many banks' direct commercial loan exposure to retailers is greater than their exposure to energy producers, such as oil and gas. What this slide tells us is we have to look at our own portfolio to see what our exposure is and then determine the level of concern that we should have. So some considerations for loan review. Periodically perform targeted reviews on retail-related loan portfolios, and also look at businesses that derive their income from retail, like the wholesalers and service companies. Some examples of retail loans would be motor vehicle and parts dealers, grocery stores, building material suppliers, strip centers, and apparel, and shoe stores, that type of thing. Identify and tag loans in your portfolio whose cash flow may have some dependence on the retail sector. Also get with your loan officer to see how the retail investor is doing. Are they having a hard time replacing tenants? Ask if there is increased vacancy leading to pressure on rents. The big worry is vacated malls and other type of retail properties will push down rental rates. So monitoring the retail risk in your portfolio. Carve out a retail portfolio within the loan portfolio. Calculate the average loan-to-value ratio for these loans. Determine occupancy. Monitor the usual items such as debt service and loan-to-value. Additionally, you can monitor for tenant bankruptcies and store closures. Accounts receivable for wholesalers that supply retailers. And then report that information to the board. And here's a hypothetical illustration of how that could be summarized for the board. This would be a sample view of a retail portfolio within a loan portfolio. The average loan-to-value ratio for these loans is approximately 55%. Occupancy is 90%. Approximately 90% of our CRE retail loans are to borrowers where the underlying retail business are not regional shopping malls or regional shopping centers. And the reason we point that out is because those are currently experiencing the most problem. But do not include neighborhood strip malls, standalone retail. But I'm sorry, do also include neighborhood strip malls, standalone retail facilities, and single-tenant buildings. Of the regional shopping center exposure, approximately 95% is term debt, and the criticized loan ratio is 5%. You can also add categories for multi-tenant with an anchor or multi-tenant with no anchor.
So Skip, this would be a scenario in which you would consider this a fairly positive scenario for a lender?
Yeah, this, based on what's in the slide, this would not be at high risk right now because of the margins on the debt service and the collateral values, et cetera, and how the past due. Right? That's what you would want to monitor for. And everything's obviously broken out here, 30%, that's just a hypothetical. It could be different in different bank portfolios. So this leads to enhancing your focus. Are the tenants of your borrowers insulated from online retail? Examples of those would be accountants, technology workers, consultants, and financial planners. Do they fit the profile of a business that could be threatened by e-commerce, clothing stores, other retail goods, tool suppliers? Keep a list of online retail industries and determine if the loan you are reviewing could be competing with one of these industries. An easy way to get that list is to go to Amazon and pull up a list of the retail stores they have. That would be a quick way to get it. Class B properties should have a second look. Not all retail property types have been impacted the same way based on what I've been reading. Class A tends to perform better. But this actually runs contrary to my personal experience during the downturn in 2008. It was the newer strip centers then and the mini malls that had a hard time leasing up, and therefore some were classified substandard and watch list loans. But I'm not suggesting your Class B properties are going to be a problem. If they have favorable collateral margins and adequate debt service, they should be able to weather a downcline. The dry cleaner I go to is in an older building next door to my favorite coffee shop. So I would probably stop using that dry cleaner even if they got disrupted by e-commerce. If the coffee shop moved out, I'd probably have my clothes dry cleaned at a closer location or use some type of Uber delivery service. Here's some examples of Class B properties that I recently took a picture of, and they were repurposed. So people are being very creative at repurposing properties. On the left is a movie theater I used to go to, and now they're repurposing it as a warehouse, and they actually installed that bay door you see in the picture. And on the right is a mall that was repurposed as a church, and they actually call it the Church at the Mall. So warehouse space. Online retailers are desiring warehouse space closer to cities to facilitate quick package delivery. This is called, in their words, the last mile delivery. This is prompting an expansion in warehouses. Amazon and others are occupying over 500 warehouse-type properties, and they're used as delivery stations, prime hubs, fulfillment centers, sorting centers, and food distribution centers. Could warehouse loans rise to a level of concentration in a bank portfolio? That's something to be cognizant of. So let's look for the warning signs. Trends that potentially indicate trouble is coming could be increasing past dues, margin compression, and decreasing cash flows. Vacated malls and other empty spaces putting pressure on rents. Look at deposit history for average balance trends. Those are leading indicators. Account managers get reports on deposit activity. Utilize those. Set Google alerts to monitor what's happening to CMBS in your retail or in your retail footprint, et cetera. Check out this RMA article, Tenants Managing CRE. It gives additional recommendations for May of 2017. When I was a banker, we partnered with merchant sales representatives for various sales strategies. So I thought, why not utilize the merchant banker partnership to see what's happening in real time as it relates to sales? They could be seeing trends that develop real time. This information could be analyzed and cross-referenced to the loan portfolio to establish correlations. For example, one correlation: do decreases in retail sales in one area lead to increases in slow pays and borrower concessions in the same area? Determine trends in the merchant sales activity in your region, and do these trends eventually show up in the loan portfolio? The merchant provider can provide valuable insight into tendency of your borrowers via real-time sales data they have access to. Additional other analytical tools can also be purchased, and those are referenced in that article I referred to in the RMA of May of 2017. So banks should develop their own data. During reviews, to see how those are tracking. A subset of retail stores that don't have an online presence to monitor their performance. That's getting more granular. Analyze the rents of surrounding retail when a big box goes dark to see if it really has an impact. Is the retailer embracing an omni-channel strategy? During loan review, a lot of this can be obtained from the company's website. In summary, CRE has definitely been impacted and has shown up in CMBS as default and late pays. Impact on bank loans is still unclear. Assess your portfolio to see if it's been impacted and report it to the board so they can discuss if any qualitative adjustments need to be made to the ALLL. gather loan data and look for trends such as past dues and decreasing collateral values. Leverage partnerships within the bank. Loan officers know what's going on in their customers' deposits, and merchant service provider partners know what's going on in the retail market with sales. Closing thoughts. I am not aware this is a regulatory issue at this point, but wouldn't it be great to already have this risk quantified if the regulators asked about it? Although these loans are not showing up now with slow pays, are there any issues emerging when you look at them as a group, such as margin compression or declines in cash flow? In summary, this appears to be a slow-moving event, so you have time to develop a strategy in case it becomes an issue. Jim, I guess I will turn it back over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Skip. That was really, really insightful stuff. So based on a number of people that are still with us here, I think, Skip, you did a real good job. Just a few items of housekeeping before we wrap up this webinar. I really do hope that everybody that dialed in found this to be of benefit. Just wanted to announce that we're going to continue doing this, and we certainly want your feedback. So please do, review these upcoming webinars and give us some input. If there's anything that we're missing, any blind spots that we have, we would be happy to incorporate this into our calendar. So we do have the Loan Review Industry Benchmark Survey scheduled for June. Be on the lookout for invitations coming to that event, but you can also reach out to me directly, and I'll be happy to send you a personal invite and the information related to it. We are going to be talking about the impact of Bitcoin on lending. This is actually something we talked about at our user conference in February, and it was met with a lot of interest. So we're going to continue down that path, and we're going to dive deeper into that topic. And then we've got C&I lending coming back on the radar with the economy improving. We think that there's going to be some implications there. And then some more, let's say, utilizing loan and the impact of AI on reviews. These are just thought-provoking items that maybe you can provide some feedback on. And I mentioned we'd love to hear from you. If you want a copy of this presentation, reach out to me or Skip directly. Our contact information is going to be on this last slide. We'd love to hear from you for any reasons, but the slide deck does have all the references, everything that Skip utilized to collect the data here for this webinar. He's got the references in the back of that presentation. So if you want that, be sure to send Skip or I an email. And then, my title is Sales and Marketing, so I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't. You can also spend your company CQS. Just on that note, we were just on a user call where we were talking about the new release of CQS and actually some of the items of how they're utilizing relationships and groups within our system would help categorize and classify risk within your retail portfolio that really would help drive some better risk identification and help improve your scoping process. So these are things that we'd love to talk to you about and see if CQS may be a fit for your organization. And last but not least, here's our contact information. Again, reach out to me for any reason. Reach out to Skip directly too if you want to just talk about this webinar, give us some insights, some opinions, and some feedback. We hope you really enjoyed this session. It's been a lot of fun on our part putting this together, and we're going to continue to do this moving forward. Thanks a lot and have a great day.